You just got Alice and you are ready to use her as she's your first legendary champion, or maybe your second or third one, but she is actually extremely powerful, and today we're going to be talking about how to properly build her to be a machine, both in PvE and PvP. Hello, my name is Midway, and welcome to this video. We're going to be checking out all you need to do to actually build her to be your campaign farmer and a very strong PvP champion, so join me as we do that. Alice is a champion that comes from the daily login rewards that have been in the game for a little while, so if you are one of the newer players, you're gonna be getting it very handily as soon as you start playing the game. So you're gonna be offered basically everything you need to get her up and running. You're gonna be getting the whole champion for free initially. You're also gonna be able to get her all the way up to 6 stars ascended, and rather the soul level is going to be able to go to 5 stars, that's what I mean, because you're going to be getting that for free, which is going to be making her extremely powerful, by the way. And then you will also be showered in gear that is going to be coming very handy, since it's all going to be 6 stars, right? We're talking about the accessories, which will be one of the harder pieces to get all the way up to 6 stars legendary, since, well, it comes from the spider, and in order to be able to get that, you would need to be farming a very high level of the spider, right? So right off the bat, you got a champion, you got her decked out. Now, what do we do about her, right? So let's first and foremost talk about the stats. Freeze! Click the link in the description right now and get a free legendary Karato, as well as 2 free epics as you level up. So here's what you need to do. First of all, log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall. Then click the link in the description of this video and register a brand new email. Launch raid and complete the tutorial, and then go to your inbox and claim your first champ. You'll find Karato here, as well as Tagoar and Uugo as you progress through the game. This is an amazing account starting rate, so click the link right now and follow the steps. And if you are a legendary mushroom player, I also got a special link down there in the description. Don't miss out on this offer, go ahead and check it out now. Now, Alice builds basically the same in terms of stats for both PvE and PvP, and what you're going to be wanting to do is to get her decked out in some crit rate first and foremost. She loves to be able to do some massive crits, and therefore crit damage is also insanely important for her. Get it all the way up there as high as you can, because she's going to be critting a lot, and that damage is going to be insane. And it's going to be synergizing very well with the artifact set, which we'll talk about in a second. Attack percentage is also fitting very good here, since she's going to be scaling those crit hits if she's got higher base attack, so the attack percentage will be extremely nice for that. And finally, accuracy and speed is always usually going to be very nice for basically any champion in the game, but getting a massive amount of accuracy for any kind of high level PvP and PvE content is going to be insane. And speed, of course, you want her to attack as often as possible and as soon as possible, so that is your stat prio. What about the artifact sets? Well, you can see we are running on a Savage as well as Perception set, right? Those two are the best ones for her in combination. Now, why is that? Well, we are going to be going through a lot of enemy defense, right? We're going to be trying to get those crits to ignore the enemy's defenses and go straight up for the throat, right? She's going to be a nuker. In fact, she's got a nuker build for PvP, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then accuracy and speed is just going to be extremely nice altogether, like some of the best stats you can get on her, and they're going to be coming very nicely in a good pack here with the Perception rather artifact set, right? So yeah, we just put together a good set of artifacts here that are just going to be coming up with all the requirements we talked about. A lot of accuracy, crit rate, speed, attack percentage, attack in general, right? All the good stuff we already checked out on the stats section. That's why they are so damn high. It's because it comes very nicely with the gear that I put on her. I try to get my crit damage and the crit rate as high as I could, and just trying to get attack everywhere that I can as well, and as well as speed and accuracy. So there we go, massive crit rate, massive crit damage. My gear is not perfect by any means, of course, could always be better, but we got a good basis to start working with her. Very nice gauntlets here with 60% crit rate on a 6-star set of Savage gauntlets. Insane pull that I got. I didn't buy this, by the way, from anywhere. I just got them. And there we go. We got as well as the crit damage over here. We got some HP, which we don't really mind too much as well. It's not too terrible. And this piece, for example, will probably be my worst one, which is basically a defensive piece. Again, not too terrible, but I would change this one if I could. And then finally, we got a little bit of another somehow defensive piece. We got some defense over here, so I could change these 2 pieces over here to make her a little bit more aggressive just by scaling that crit damage. The crit rate is not bad if you get it a little bit higher, because you're going to be facing enemies that are of the kind of affinity where you are a little bit weaker against, right? So that crit rate is going to be lower versus them. and if you go all the way up to 130 or something like that, you're gonna be able to still to guarantee always crit on them. So that is always a very, very good idea to keep in mind. Now, the random artifacts here that you get, or rather the ring, the necklace, and the banner that you get from her, you are not always going to be getting good stats on them, right? It's kind of random. In this case, we got a little bit of a defensive one again, a little bit of HP and defense, nothing too crazy that we are actually valuing for the stats that we talked about. Again, HP on this one, accuracy not terrible, attack not terrible, but everything else is defensive, and a little bit more of the same here, HP and defenses, although we do have some attack and attack percentage on this one, and we also got the accuracy going on over there, right, with the Ascension. So, all in all, these pieces might be not the best for you, but, I mean, they are going to be legendary, they're going to be 6 stars, so you want to actually be just straight up getting them ascended if you can as well. They are definitely worth just putting on. Obviously, you're going to be getting there for free, but they're going to be a little bit harder to get the right stats on them. You will really need to try and make the extra effort to get those elder stats from your Savage and your Perception sets. I guess we will briefly mention her skills because we will also find some synergies with all this stuff that we already talked about, right? So we're going to be having her A1, which is just going to be extremely useful in many bosses, but in general, what she's going to be doing, as well as, of course, damage, she is going to be having a very high chance of decreasing the duration of a random buff on the target for 1 turn. That is with each hit, of course, each hit, so you can actually remove 3 buffs from the enemy by doing this basically every time, right? Very, very great skill. Then we have the Clockwork Cyclone AoE attack. You're pretty much going to be one-shotting the enemies with this. Usually you're going to be able to just speed clear or campaign farm very, very much like you would do with your Kale or your Elhines. You can do that instead with Alice, and I would recommend you to actually build up your Alice before your Elhine if you get her early, so you can just go ahead and speed clear a little bit easier. Of course, Alice is going to be becoming a lot more powerful with all the free stuff you're getting, as well as just being a much more useful champion in the late game. So if you can go ahead and do that, just build her up instead of your Elhines or Chaos, because of this one skill is just going to be speed clearing the whole thing. It's also going to be having a very high chance of increasing the cooldowns of all enemies up to 2 turns, right? By 2 turns, which is actually insane in PvP. They're going to be, your enemy is going to be starting in a massive back foot. They're not going to be able to do their opener, and instead they're actually going to have to cycle through their skills and use their other shittier A1 skills, right? So you'd rather get this very high level as well. As you can see, it increases the chances of things happening. They actually 100%. Then there's also a massive chance of decreasing the enemy's turn meter, and if you at least increase the cooldown of one of the targets, then that is going to be a 30% turn meter decrease. So they are going to be starting even more on the back foot. This is a very, very strong skill for PvP, as well as, of course, for the speed clearing in the campaign. Then we have her nuke, which is the Queen Slayer. It's going to be having a 20% target defense just naturally, right? Ignore 20% of target defense. If you pair that up with the artifacts we talked about, the artifact set, that is a 45% target defense ignored, right? So you're going through a lot of those defenses. You're going to be able to nuke tanks. You're going to be able to extremely one-shot just squishes. She is a nuker. And then if you kill one enemy with this attack, then you are going to be doing another attack. So it's going to be a double nuke, which will also just go ahead and apply the 20% ignore of the target's defense. And finally, you got her passive, which is going to be doing a little bit more damage for each turn remaining on the skills of the enemy, right? The enemy you're attacking. So the more you have increased the enemy's cooldowns onto their skills, the more damage you're going to be doing. And this is going to be applying individually for each target. So if you're doing the clockwork and it's going to be hitting everybody, this will count for each individual, depending on whether or not you actually increased their cooldowns on their skills. And then finally, it's going to be resetting the cooldown of these champion skills every time they kill an enemy, right? One of these champion skills, not every single one of them, will be reset if they actually manage to kill an enemy. So you can get something like a Clockwork Cyclone going on early on in the game, and you're going to be getting it back immediately if you actually kill an enemy. So you're going to be able to do 2 of those in PvP as well as PvE. That's why it's so good, because you can just go in first round of enemies, you one-shot them all, second round of enemies, this cooldown is back, then you just one-shot them all, and then for the third wave, then it's not going to be usually up because it's going to be on cooldown, right? It's got 3 turn cooldown, so it cannot be up just yet, but all in all, extremely powerful passive. Of course, her aura is just straight up more attack, 30% more attack in all battles. Usually you would want to be putting this as your aura carry, unless you want something like a little bit more accuracy in some types of content, or even some speed, like for example I do with my Akentum. But overall, that is an insane bonus, 30% very high up, very, very worth it. Now, you're going to be using blessings as well very early on, and that is of course if you have the soul level unlocked, but since you're going to be getting 3 souls, right, all the way up to 5 soul level, you're actually going to be able to get very good value out of your blessings, as that's basically why she's going to be so damn powerful. And you're going to be wanting to use different kinds of blessings depending on how many soul levels you currently have, as well as the type of content you want to be doing. So for PvE in particular, between soul levels 1 to 4, so that is until you have all the rewards from your Alice chase, you're going to be using the Brimstone, right? What the Brimstone does is that it's going to be placing a buff onto the enemies, and every time those enemies with that debuff, or yeah, it's a debuff on them, they're going to be having a chance of being hit by a meteorite that's going to be dealing 25% of their champion's max HP. This is actually pretty powerful versus things like the clan boss, because he's actually going to be nuking himself for like 250,000 HP. I think that is also going to be scaling with, depends on the level you do that boss in particular. Not too sure about that. But in any case, yeah, this is straight up just a big hit, right? As you can see over here, it's a 50% chance of placing the debuff, and it's going to be scaling with the more levels you have. But eventually, once you reach the 5-star point, right, the 5 soul level point, you'd rather go and switch to the Crushing Rend. Now, what the Crushing Rend does is that it's going to be giving you a chance of ignoring the enemy's defenses. Again, just like a little bit more of that, as we saw with the artifact set, as well as the skill we have over here with the Queenslayer. This is going to be increasing all of that stuff, right? She's going to be even more nukey. So you do get the same amount of stats from the different blessings, but what you do get with this one is a scaling chance of ignoring that defense. The more soul level you have, that is going to be allowing you to get more defense ignore, because, well, it's going to be happening for every 25 champion levels. So at level 1, it's only going to be active for 1% if the champion is level 50, then that is going to be 1% still if the champion is level 40, so maybe it's going to be like 1.5 if they are level 60, and then that's going to be going down all the way to 1% defense ignore for every 10 levels, meaning that you're going to be getting a base 6% defense ignore out of this for all those 10 levels. And then you also get, of course, all the boosts you see here, which of course are the ones you are also seeing up here, so there's no really point of mentioning those. But all that you get from this is just the chance of ignoring more of the enemy's defenses, so just you are able to do more nukes, and that is why you want to be actually using this one at the point where your champion is already strong enough, as well as where you can get access to this one, because otherwise you're only going to be getting 1.5 defense ignore, which is not the greatest. You'd rather have the other, or rather the Brimstone blessing, because it's going to be just randomly doing more damage. So when you do get to this point where you're at 5 soul levels, that's when you switch to the Crushing Rend blessing. For PvP in particular, it's going to be a different story. First of all, we will want to be using temporal chains from soul levels 1 to 4, and that is going to be allowing you to decrease the enemy's speed by a few percentage, of course scaling up with the level, for each active buff, right? So at level 1 of the soul, it's going to be 2% for each active buff up to a maximum of 6%. And once we do get to 6 stars, in this case, it would also be decreasing the turn meter of all enemies. Now, this doesn't apply to buffs that you get at the beginning of the battle, so it's not that great. I mean, the enemies don't actually start already debuffed by this one blessing in particular, but if they are an enemy that's going to be getting a lot of buffs, usually that's going to be happening a lot of PvP, of course, you are going to be decreasing their speed by up to, 9%, as well as getting all the other buffs. Now, once we do get to 5 stars on the soul level, we want to be switching that. Once we do get to 5 soul level, we want to be switching on PvP in particular for the Soul Reap, right? So the Soul Reap, what's going to be doing is that if you do a certain amount of damage to the enemy, it's going to be making a Reaper appear, which is going to be hitting the enemy, ignoring all their defenses, right? It's not going to be applying to bosses. That's why this is not good for PvE in particular, but it's going to be dishing quite some damage to the enemy, ignoring all their defenses. And most importantly, once we do get to the 6-star point, or rather the 5-star point on the soul level, that's why we start using it at the 5 soul star level, you're also going to be having a chance of applying the True Fear debuff if the target that gets hit by the Reaper actually survives the hit. Now, True Fear is a debuff that has a 50% chance of making that the next active skill used by the enemy with the debuff will actually have, that skill will have no effect. So they basically just lose the turn. And also that skill goes on cooldown, right? So this is a very powerful debuff to put onto the enemy, and once you get it all the way up to 6-star level, that is going to actually have a 100% chance of happening, right? So extremely powerful blessing to have for PvP. The masteries you want to be running are the following. We got this set that we are just generally running for PvE in particular. So we're going with crit rate over here. We're also getting some crit damage. Then we have increased damage when attacking with full HP. We're getting a little bit of extra damage, or rather a little bit of sustain here with our damage when attacking with low health. We also got increased damage with targets or two targets that have low HP, so a little bit of extra nuking. That's 8% more damage. Then my camera is going to be a little bit on the way, but increased damage inflicted by 6% when attacking targets with higher max HP than you. So basically pretty much all the tanks and usually bosses as well. Increased damage inflicted by 6% in arena, so very, very important for PvP, and 6 battles, and 3% in all other locations for each enemy killed by this champion in battle. So the more rounds you go into it, the higher this buff is going to be. Stacks across each round, that is going to be for PvE in particular, but in PvP it's also going to be a massive buff. Then we are also going to be having an increased damage basically by her A1, and every time they use it, or rather she uses it, is going to be stacking up all the way up to 10%, so her A1 is going to be more powerful over time. And then finally, a massive chance of inflicting bonus damage when attacking in general, and then that bonus damage is going to be equaling to 10% of the champion's max HP or 4% of the target's max HP, right? So it's going to be just in general more damage. That's going to be also applying only when attacking bosses. In general, it's going to be your own champion's max HP. That's why max HP, or rather HP in general, is not that terrible on her either if you have this one particular mastery. And the bonus damage can only occur once per skill, and it does not count as an extra hit for things like, for example, the Fire Knight, right? So we're also going to be getting this on the support side, 10% accuracy, or rather just more accuracy, which is always good on her. Increases accuracy by 20 when this champion has no skills on cooldown, which is very much synergetic with her passive, which can get skills off of cooldown very quickly if she kills things. Increased accuracy by 4 for each enemy alive, so if you are just starting a battle in PvP, everybody's alive, that is going to be full up and running. We just checked that one. Increased battle stats and bonuses of all artifact sets that increase base stats by 15%, so this one also going to be very good with the perception set in particular for that accuracy and that speed. The increase is not multiplicatively, it's multiplicatively, it's not additive, so that is quite a massive increase. We also have a 5% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill by 1 at the start of every turn, so yep, obviously insane. And then increase the speed by 8 for each dead ally, so if she's going to be the last one in PvP, this one is going to be quite good, so she can actually do the outplay and clear out the entirety of the enemy team. Now, there is other specific kinds of mastery setups, both for PvE and PvP. I talked about the nuker setup, which is going to be allowing her to do just exactly that, one-shot people a little bit easier, but this is for PvE in particular, right? So if you're interested in other kinds of builds, or for PvP in particular, go ahead and check this one again. You're going to have the same nuker build for PvP in particular, as well as for just being a little bit of a support, increasing the enemy's cooldowns, as well as reducing their buff durations and stuff, right? You can get a little bit of a support usage out of Alice, but she's overall a little bit better just as a nuker, right? If you just want to have her do a lot of damage and one-shot a lot of people, but I'm sure there's other champions that are a little bit better, so maybe in high-end arena, her cooldown control setup is not that terrible, but yeah, I think the nuker setup is definitely what you kind of want to be going for as an arena setup with Alice. I can't really talk about relics on her, I don't have any, and I don't even have access to crafting them just yet, so I'm gonna be skipping that for probably a further video. And that is generally going to be it. I mean, you can pretty much know that Alice is a very strong champion for basically everything in the game, as you can see by the reviews in-game, as well as in Hell Hades. She's got a score of 4. And yes, she's particularly strong as a general just speed clearing champion for just your campaign farming, for leveling up, as well as both for arena offense and defense, right? So all in all, very powerful champion. You're gonna get her for free, so know how to deck her out, get the most out of her. She's gonna be unlocking a lot of stuff for you just in general to be be able to go through the game, especially as a new player. And hopefully you enjoyed the video. Before you go, please go ahead and check out Aptoide if you haven't done so yet. Aptoide is going to be allowing you to get a lot of extra value for your money when doing purchases within Raid Shadow Legends. So picture that you're going to be buying a pack like this one, and you're going to be getting a bonus for that much money you're spending that can go from 10% all the way up to 35%, right? So picture that you're going to be accumulating these bonuses and eventually going to be able to use the bonuses to make the payments for you instead of actually using your real money, right? So you use that bonus, and instead of actually using the PayPal or credit card, you just go ahead and get this for free, right? So you can increase that bonus by doing things like using my code, which is going to be in the screen as well as down in the description. I'll have a guide down there in the description as well about how to set up Aptoide and how to start playing Raid Shadow Legends through Aptoide on your Android device as well as on emulators on your PC. So if you're interested in getting more value for your money, go ahead and check that out now. And if you go ahead and use my code, you're also going to be helping me out immensely. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about it down there in the comments. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye. See you.